All right, hello everyone. This week we're supposed to talk about lecture number 10. The lecture content is about nested loop and also the example about finding duplicates, the 4 different versions. I haven't seen any questions on the Google Doc, so I presume everybody was okay for that particular method. If you haven't got a chance to study that, you may want to catch up because that example will be covered in your written test next week, but not a programming test. So there's only one question on the Google Doc. Why don't I go over that quickly together with you? It's only just about the distinction between static and also non-static variable. I'll clarify that quickly, and then I'll open the floor for questions, and then we'll see how that goes. Okay. Let me now go on to talk about the question. So only one on the Google Doc. Okay. Let's now read the question from your fellow student together. They're having some difficulties understanding the difference between static and also regular. I think what they meant regular was non-static, right? Variables that we used before, okay? And then they know that we cannot use this behind it like the attributes and so basically he's saying that when we actually try to get access to static attributes or static variables, we should not actually use this. That's actually correct. However, I would say something a little bit more to this. Okay, and also, and then how can we actually do? What can we do with it that we can't do with the regular variables? So they're basically demanding a comparison between the two kinds of variables. Okay, I'll speak about it. Can we access it from other classes? The answer is yes. You can definitely access static variables from other classes. It's actually okay, provided that you did not declare them as private. Okay, it's really important to see to know that. Okay, so I'm going to write something on the paper, and then so this is something you should also try on the Eclipse to really emphasize your understanding. Okay, let's now do the following. Okay. Let's say, let's use an easy class to talk about, to illustrate. Let's say we have some public class. Let's say A, okay, just class A. And then let's now try to declare 2 variables, one static, the other one non-static, okay? So let's try the following. If I try private over here, if I say private static integer I, right? And then we said that usually for the static variable, it's going to be shared among all the objects of type A in this case. So we should actually initialize some proper value for that. But for now, let's simply say it's going to be equal to 1. Okay. And then let's got another non-static, which we call attributes. So private and also integer, and then J. Okay, and then we don't normally initialize the attributes, non-static attributes, when we declare that. You normally do that in the constructor. Okay, so here we can say public, and then let's say A. So that's a constructor, and then over here we can definitely try to do something to with the 2 attributes, right? So now what can we write over here? So whatever I'm going to write over here under the context of constructor, the same principle applies to any other accessor or mutator in the same class, right? I'm going to talk about it.
That kind of are like beginner tutorials.
Hello, was there some question? Hello? Okay, I thought there was some question from one of you. So guys, if you got a question, don't be shy. Just speak up, okay? I just want to make sure. Let's say for this class over here, let me put it here like that. Okay, so now let's try the following. Let's say we got another class over here, just another class. Another class could be maybe some console application or maybe some JUnit test or simply just another class, right? Either way. Okay, let's say in the context of another class, and we are trying to do the following. Let's say if we say A, let's try the various combinations. So now, first of all, can I say A dot I? Can I do this or not, right? The answer is you cannot over here, even though you're trying to use the class name over here to get access to the static variable. But the problem is I was declared to be private. So you just cannot get access to some private attributes, private variable, static or not, outside this particular class. So this is not good, right? Because it's private. If you really want to get access to the static variable outside the declaring class, you could have simply declared this to be public if you want to. If you do that, so this will be okay. All right. So let me just emphasize that. Okay. So that's kind of corresponding to the last part of your fellow student question. Can you actually get? Can you access the static variable from other classes? The answer is yes, provided that the static variable was not declared as private. But in this case, it's private, so you just cannot do it. Okay. Let's talk about another thing over here. And then, so can we say something like A dot J? So the answer is no, you cannot. Number one is actually because you can see J here was simply just declared to be non-static. You can see you don't see any static keyword over here. So that means whenever you want to get access to J, it must come with some context objects. But A over here is not a context objects. And also, it was declared to be private, so you just cannot access to it. So the reason is, number one, it's about private, and also number two is about it being non-static. Okay, so let's now talk about what if we got some context objects. What's going to happen? Okay, let's say here, if we got another, let's say here we say A. Let's create some objects. Let's say object A is assigned to the address of some new objects here of type A. Okay, let's say this. Let's say that's what we do. Now, can I actually say, let's assume the following. Okay, let's assume that we actually say private. We still got private and private actually, right? So now if you try to say OA.I and also OA.J, both of them will still not be okay, right? It will still be cross. So for this one here, it's not okay because we got private. Okay. For this one here, OA.J, it is also not okay because we got private. Okay. Temporarily, you can also try this in Eclipse. You can, if temporarily you try to change from private into public, for example. If you do that, and then OA.I, accessing the static variable over here, it will be okay. However, you will get some warning. So the warning would say, in this case, you're using the static. You're trying to use the static variable in a non-static way, right? That's actually the message that we look at together in the lecture. So you may just want to look at the lecture again. Okay, I think that's a lecture from week number 9, so you can look at that. Okay, all right. So finally, so that's about from external classes. I want to speak about what about in that particular class where the static variable is declared, how can we use it? Okay, so this will be the external class. External class. So you should really try with the various scenarios that I just spoke about over here in Eclipse. That's something you should try. Let me talk about just in this particular method here, right? So now what can we write? Let me just go back to, let's say rather than public, right? It's just private. Okay, what can we write over here? So first of all, can I say this dot J maybe it's simply initialized to be 23. So this will actually be okay. So this is exactly how we did OOP in the tutorial videos, since the previous weeks, because J was non-static. There's no static over here, so we can simply use the this to refer to the context objects, right? So this will be okay. So that's possibility number 1. So now, can I say something like this? Can I say A dot J is assigned to 23? This one here apparently is a no, right? Because J was declared as non-static. However, you're trying to access it using it as a static way. So basically, A over here is not a context object. So this is no, right? So here we just review quickly about how you can get access to the non-static variable or attributes. What about the static one? Let me just get rid of this. Okay, let's talk about another two possibility here. What if I say here, let's see, blue would still be fine. What if I say here, a dot I is reassigned to 23. So this will actually be okay, right? This is actually fine because you're trying to assign I, which was declared as static, and then you're really accessing it in the static way, which is to use a class name to access it. So in that case, you can definitely do it. So this is really the main. You can think about this is really how you should get access to static variable, and this is how you should get access to non-static variable. One more possible scenario. What if I say over here, if I say this dot I is reassigned to maybe 46, right? This is just another one. I think that's also mentioned in your fellow students' question over here. So now can we do this? I would say this one is a little bit in the gray area, okay? This one here is actually, I would say almost like a half, all right? In the sense that you're going to get a warning because this is really a proper context objects. However, to really get access to the static variable, you don't really need a context object, just unnecessary, okay? So this is going to be a warning. The warning is going to be something called accessing static variable in a, sorry, I'm running out of space. I'll just go here, in a non-static way. Right? So here I talk about all the possibilities, right? So here, these are all the possibility outside the declaring class for the static variable. And here is the declaring class for the static variable. So I talk about both, right? So I think that should answer your fellow students' question, okay? So that's about static versus non-static. Okay, another good question here. So for the static, can we just put, okay? I think there's another one you can also think about here. Let's say in the context of A over here, I can either say I'm talking about this particular method, right? I'm still talking about inside of this method. I can say I is reassigned to 23. So here I'm not really using either a class name or maybe a context object. So this will be okay, right? So Java compiler will be smart enough to say here, when you say I, you're really just referring to this I here. So implicitly, you really meant a.I. So that will be okay. On the other hand, so this will be okay. So let me put a check mark. So this will be fine. However, I will recommend maybe not to use I only. You may just want to qualify that by saying a.I. So that'll be clearer about what you really want to do, right? On the other hand, in the external class that's outside the context of the declaring class, let's say inside external class, can I simply say, okay, again, I'm running out of space. Let me say here. Can I simply just use I over here? Maybe it's assigned to maybe 46, right? So now this will not be okay anymore, right? You can see this is okay because we're doing this in the context of the class where the static variable is declared. However, if we go outside that particular context, it will not be okay anymore, right? So this over here is not good, right? It's going to be cross, right? So you need to write a.I to really say that A is really supposed to be a class to really use. However, you of course, in this case, you want to change from private into public if you really want to do it. All right, guys, any questions related to static versus non-static? Right? I think that's mainly your fellow students' question about how to distinguish between them syntactically.
Oh yeah, I have a question.
Armin, hold on a second. I think I got another question here on the chat. I'll handle that first. Just bear with us. From Sarah. Let's put it this way. Where should I use static variables instead of non-static one? This, okay, sure. I would say you only use the static variables when you actually want to use some kind of global variable. Global in the sense that it should be a cumulative amount of the objects of that particular class, okay? I will refer you to, let me show you a note. You can find a summary over there. I think that's exactly what you need. If you go to the lectures page from last Friday, from last week, so you can see, go under week number 9, and then you can see the review for programming test 4 over here. If you click on that, I think this will be the page of the summary that you're looking for, okay? Let me just go over that quickly. You can also download the notes if you wish. For non-static variables or attributes, they are local to individual objects. So I would say if you, let's say if you want to say maybe a student object, every student has maybe an ID. So the ID attribute should be a non-static attributes. On the other hand, maybe there is some global counter over there for the student class for you to really keep incrementing and generate unique IDs, like how we discussed in the lecture. In that case, the global counter should be a static variable because it should keep accumulating amount independence of the individual instances. So here you can see for static here, it will be global amount objects, accumulating amount objects, right? So that'll be how I will respond to your question. So Sarah, does it help? Is it clear enough to you? Okay, sure. Very good. All right, next question.
So I had a question.
Go ahead.
So in the form, you said we cannot create our own classes in the lab. How about if we make static methods that have the same methods as our own class? Can we do that?
What do you mean? I don't quite get it.
So like you said, we can have our own helper methods. Can they be static or do they have to be non-static, the helper methods?
If you put helper methods, they can be either static or non-static, either way. But I wouldn't imagine you would need a static helper methods.
Oh yeah, probably not.
But in theory, yes, if you find a static helper method useful, yeah, by all means, go ahead. That's not a problem. But as we said, you should not create any additional classes that are not indicated by the JUnit tests.
Okay.
All right, guys, any more questions? All right, so that's about it. That's everything for the Google Doc, right? I don't have many, that's it. Okay, good. I would say the guiding principle for declaring an attributes either as static versus non-static. You want to ask yourself this question here about which one, whether this particular variable should be local to individual objects, or should it be global amount all the objects, right? So that's basically the guiding principle. Yeah, but I think for your upcoming programming test, the use of the static variable should be quite standard, meaning that if there's any global ID or any global counter that's going to be applied to all the instances or all the objects of a particular for a particular class, in that case, you will need a static variable. Otherwise, you can just use non-static. Okay, so I think the majority, typically, the majority of the attributes or variables you declare in your class should be non-static, the majority, okay? And here, another question here, we make static methods to output static variables. Yes, in principle, yes, correct. Because if you, one of the common errors you might have is, if, let's say I got some static method, right? Okay, let me just talk about it quickly. So that's also an important common error you should really be aware of yourself. So let's say this. Let's say we have a class, let's say A. And then let's not worry about the public versus static, okay, just for illustration. So here we can say integer I, and also static integer j, maybe initialized to be 23. And then let's say this. If we got some, let's say we got two methods. Let's say here, let's just mutate her. Let's say void M1. Void M2. Okay, so now let's say this. If I try to say I plus plus, J plus plus, I plus plus, J plus plus, okay? I think what I meant to say is another thing over here. Let me make this particular method also static, okay? So now we can have different variety to consider. All right, okay, let's now consider this. And then let me call this one here 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. So we got non-static variable, static variable, static method, non-static method over here. And then for 1, 2, 3, 4, which ones are valid? Okay, guys, you can think about it before I reveal the answer. Think about it. And this really should be something that you don't really want the help from the compiler or from the Eclipse, right? So that's something you really should try to work out the logic yourself. Whether to really use a static method, to really use a static variable in the non-static context versus using a static variable in a static context, right? That's kind of the consideration you want to have. All right, feel free to share your answer on the chat, but at least to think about it before I give you the answer, right? We can just go over one by one.
I have a question about the lab.
No, we are not done yet. We are still doing this question here. All right. Okay, so if you thought about it, basically the idea would be whenever you're calling M1, the way you can call that would be because it's static. So you would say A dot M1. That's how you would do it conceptually. And then, so that means there is no context objects over here, right? It's simply just the class name. So that means inside the implementation for this particular method, anything that will require the use of a context object would not be valid, right? So now, so that means I, in this case, would not be okay, right? Because I is actually non-static. So you just cannot use it in a static context where, for example, A is not considered as a valid context object. On the other hand, J over here is actually okay because J is static, okay? And then when you are actually calling, let's say for M2, so that means you will definitely get some context object. For example, maybe object A dot M2. So now object A dot M2, for sure, you can use this for non-static variables. So I here, number 3 will be okay. And J will be okay as well because it's static, meaning that you can actually use the OA dot J. It will be okay, but you will certainly get some warning. So warning is not really an error. So we are talking about just being valid. So that's fine. All right, that's just a quick review about the static versus non-static. All right. Guys, any follow-up question to this? Static versus non-static. All right. Any other questions?
I have a question about the lab.
Go ahead.
So if we hard code one of the J unit tests, are we going to lose marks for that?
What do you mean to hard code a J unit test?
Like, so our code were every single test case except for one test case. And then to deal with that, we just say if the input is whatever the test case is, return.
I would say don't do it. Why would you do it? It's totally wrong to do so. You should never hard code your code to actually just pass the test, because if we put the additional test on the same, test case, then you will fail them. So what's the point of hard coding them?
But before you said that your mark is what percentage of the test cases you pass. So if you hard code the JUnit test, you'll
So
pass
I don't
a
think we
high
should really argue about such penalty over here. I think it's simply wrong if you try to hard code your code for passing the test case. You shouldn't do it.
But we won't lose marks for it.
You will lose marks when you get to the additional tests for sure. And if we really find that,
But you,
I think I don't think that should be counted as correct. All right, guys. Any more questions about the lectures? Yeah, Sarah, another question here. Is it better if we make a separate method for the static variable to not get to the error? Exactly. So I think that, so based on the constraints that we are talking about over here, so that means whenever you actually want to declare some static method, because you don't really want to have a context objects in order to call that. So you just want to say a dot m1. So that means all the variables inside must be static. It's just a constraint, right? So that's correct. All right, good. All right, any more questions? All right, guys, let me just pause for one more moment. If you got any more questions, please don't be shy. If you're really shy about speaking up, feel free to come by my office hour. It's tomorrow and Wednesday, okay, the normal time.
Hi, Jackie. I have one quick question.
Of course, go ahead.
Our actual test, programming test 4, will be as hard as our example test, or
you mean
even
the practice
harder?
test? I think it will be similar. It will be similar to the difficulty. Similar.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
similar. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think I can give you a little tip over here. So when you study for your programming test number 4, so you can see if you compare the coverage between the test 3 and test 4. So the new bit you want to study for is the static variables. So you really want to make sure you understand how to use the global counter for manipulation, like a global ID, like a unique ID. So in the actual test, you might see something very similar, but not exactly the same. So you want to make sure you really understand that part. So you will be able to solve any new problem I might give to you. But back to your original question, you'll be similar.
Hello?
All right.
Professor?
Yes.
Did you say you have a Zoom Q&A tomorrow also?
No, actually, I meant the office hour. The office hour.
Office hour tomorrow?
Tomorrow, 1 p.m.
1 p.m. And
Yeah.
is it
Yeah, you're welcome to
also
come by. If you don't have any question yet, so tomorrow, Tuesday, and also Wednesday, you'll be from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
A question.
Yes.
How many times can we try the example test?
How many times can you try the example test? As many times as you like. So I think I set it to be unlimited attempts. So you can try as many times as you like.
And is there like different ones, or is it just the same one that you keep trying?
I think it's going to be the same one. So I only made the one version for your practice programming test 4, and also for your practice programming test 3. I also opened that for you as well, so you can also try that out if you want to. Yeah, but just one version. But you can try that for as many times as you like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but just remember for the actual test, only one attempt, of course. Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So is Android Studio going to be on the programming test?
No.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions? Yeah, guys, as I said, if you don't have any questions yet, feel free to drop by my office hour. Okay, I'll be happy to talk to you. And then I think we got one more Q&A next week. Okay, as I announced yesterday, there is no lecture for week 11. Right, so I think we are on schedule for covering the topics, so I can reduce the workload a little bit for this week. So there'll be no lecture for week number 11, but for week number 12, next week, we will have our final lecture and also final tutorial videos for the final week about Java API. Okay, just to let you know quickly. And everything is according to the class calendar, right? Everything has been followed, right? All right, guys, final call for any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So just to confirm, so no lectures on Tuesdays, so no lecture next week, and the last lecture of the course is 2 weeks from now.
What do you mean no lectures on Tuesday? Lectures are all pre-recorded.
I mean Q&A.
Yeah, the Q&A, yeah, it's only Monday.
And yeah, the Tuesday one got canceled because not enough people attended.
Yeah, actually quite few people, I would say. You know, I found only 2, sometimes even 1. So I think it might be better handled maybe in the office hour instead. So yeah, so we got Q&A today. And also we got one more Q&A next Monday. And then the Monday after is actually a makeup day officially for Friday. So there will be no Q&A, right? Just officially. So we got just today and also next Monday. But we'll try to schedule some additional review sessions to help you guys clarify any doubts for the exam. I'll do some survey at some point, maybe next week, and then you can just respond if you're interested. No, Sarah. Okay, as I said, so for week number 11, as announced yesterday, so there will be no lecture for week number 11. No lecture. Okay, so we only got 1 week left, which will be week number 12 lecture. And for week number 12 lecture, we'll release it on time for sure. So you still got your final week next week to study that lecture, right? If that's clear to you, I hope. All right, very good. All right, guys, thank you for coming. And then if you got more questions, I'm more than happy to answer you, maybe during the office hour tomorrow and Wednesday. All right, guys, take care, and I'll see you later.